Chapter 23. Are there pigs in your parlor? Up until this chapter, everything that I have written has been original and funneled from the portals of heaven. The credit to this portion goes directly to Frank and Ida Mae Hammond, who are now with the Lord. They wrote the awesome book called Pigs in the Parlor. It is one of the most sensible, practical books I've ever read. I wrote to Mr. Hammond shortly before he passed and told him of my experience in hell and how I appreciated his book. He and his wife were pioneers in the deliverance ministry. When I first started doing the prayer list back in Michigan in 1991, the Lord was teaching me about demons and demon clusters. I emphasized the fact that I did not read books because I had a hard time comprehending what I had read because of so much marijuana smoking. One day, I was sitting down and the Lord started giving me specific demon personalities that me and my intercessors, were to target in prayer. It was something that came so simply, it was like I was not even doing the writing, but God was. I was amazed at how similar the revelation of a demonic army was to that what was given to the Hammonds. I read that book in 2002. It gave me more confidence that I was hearing the voice of God and not going crazy. Some of the terms the Lord had given me were in more modern language, the way I speak. However, I sense that I'm to list the demon clusters that were given to the Hammonds. I have added a few that the Lord gave me. Okay, here we go. This is a long list. The following demons hang out together. Satan has an organized army of demons, and they are at different rankings and orders. Flocks of demons are associated with other flocks of demons. It goes along with the saying, birds of a feather flock together. Once you read this, now hear this, it will be easy to identify certain types of people that you know and perhaps yourself. The purpose is to give you a better understanding of separate the demons from the people message, love and forgive the people, hate the demons, and tell them to go back to the pit. Okay. The spirit of bitterness hangs out with resentment, hatred, unforgiveness, violence, temper, anger, retaliation, and murder. The spirit of rebellion hangs out with self-will, stubbornness, disobedience, and anti-submissiveness. The spirit of strife hangs out with contention, bickering, argument, quarreling, and fighting. The spirit of control hangs out with possessiveness, dominance, and witchcraft. The spirit of retaliation hangs out with destruction, spite, hatred, sadism, hurt, and cruelty. The spirit of accusation hangs out with judging, criticism, and fault-finding. The spirit of rejection hangs out with the fear of rejection and self-rejection. The spirit of insecurity hangs out with inferiority, self-pity, loneliness, timidity, shyness, inadequacy, and ineptness. The spirit of jealousy hangs out with envy, suspicion, distrust, and selfishness. The spirit of withdrawal hangs out with pouting, daydreaming, fantasy, pretension, and unreality. The spirit of escape hangs out with indifference, passivity, sleepiness, alcohol, and drugs. The spirit of passivity hangs out with funk, indifference, listlessness, and lethargy. The spirit of depression hangs out with despair, despondency, discouragement, defeatism, dejection, hopelessness, suicide, death, insomnia, and morbidity. The spirit of heaviness hangs out with gloom, burden, and disgust. The spirit of worry hangs out with anxiety, fear, dread, and apprehension. The spirit of nervousness hangs out with tension, headache, nervous habits, restlessness, excitement, insomnia, and roving. The spirit of sensitiveness hangs out with self-awareness, fear of man, and fear of disapproval. The spirit of persecution hangs out with unfairness, fear of judgment, fear of condemnation, fear of accusation, fear of reproof, and sensitiveness. The spirit of mental illness hangs out with insanity, madness, mania, retardation, senility, and schizophrenia. The spirit of paranoia hangs out with jealousy, envy, suspicion, distrust, persecution, fear, and confrontation. The spirit of confusion hangs out with frustration, incoherence, and forgetfulness. The spirit of death hangs out with depression, cancer, infirmity, oppression, addiction, and hate. The spirit of doubt hangs out with unbelief and skepticism. The spirit of indecision hangs out with procrastination, compromise, confusion, forgetfulness, and indifference. The spirit of self-deception hangs out with self-delusion, self-seduction, and pride. The spirit of mind-bending hangs out with confusion, fear of man, fear of failure, occult spirits, and other spiritism spirits. It's a lot of spirits there. The spirit of mind idolatry hangs out with intellectualism, rationalization, pride, and ego. The spirit of fear hangs out with phobias, hysteria, and hysteria. The spirit of fear of authority hangs out with lying and deceit. The spirit of pride hangs out with ego, vanity, self-righteousness, haughtiness, importance, and arrogance. The spirit of affection hangs out with theatrics, play acting, sophistication, and pretension. The spirit of covetousness hangs out with stealing, kleptomania, material, lust, greed, and discontent. The spirit of perfection hangs out with pride, vanity, ego, frustration, criticism, irritability, intolerance, and anger. The spirit of competition hangs out with driving, argument, pride, and ego. The spirit of impatience hangs out with agitation, frustration, intolerance, resentment, and criticism. The spirit of false burden hangs out with false responsibility and false compassion. The spirit of grief hangs out with sorrow, heartache, heartbreak, crying, sadness, and cruelty. The spirit of fatigue hangs out with tiredness, weariness, and laziness. The spirit of infirmity hangs out with all sickness or disease. The spirit of inheritance hangs out with physical inheritance, emotional inheritance, mental inheritance, and curse inheritance. The spirit of hyperactivity hangs out with restlessness, driving, and pressure. The spirit of cursing hangs out with blasphemy, course testing, gossip, criticism, backbiting, and railing. The spirit of addictive and compulsive hangs out with gambling, nicotine, alcohol, drugs, legal medications, caffeine. Oh, I love caffeine. And gluttony. The spirit of gluttony hangs out with nervousness, compulsive eating, resentment, frustration, idleness, self-pity, and self-reward. The spirit of self-accusation hangs out with self-hatred and self-condemnation. The spirit of guilt hangs out with condemnation, shame, unworthiness, and embarrassment. The spirit of sexual impurity hangs out with lust, perversion, fantasy, masturbation, homosexuality, lesbianism, adultery, fornication, incest, harlotry, rape, exposure, and frigidity, man-haters, and woman-haters. And those are my terms, a man-hater spirit and a woman-hater spirit. The spirit of cults hang out with Jehovah's Witness, Christian Science, Scientology, Rosicrucianism, probably didn't say that right, Theosophy, Urantia, Sabbath, Lathian, Unity, Mormonism, Baha'ism, Unitarianism, and all lodges, societies, and social agencies using the Bible and God as a basis, but omitting the blood atonement of Jesus Christ. The devil does not like the blood of Jesus. He cannot stand it. The spirit of occult hangs out with Ouija boards, palmistry, handwriting analysis, automatic handwriting, ESP, hypnotism, horoscope, astrology, levitation, fortune telling, water witching, tarot cards, pendulum, witchcraft, black magic, conjuration, incantations, charms, fetishes. The spirit of religion, my favorite one, hangs out with ritualism, formalism, legalism, doctrinal obsession, seduction, judgment, doctrinal error, fear of God, fear of hell, fear of lost salvation, religiosity. The spirit of spiritism hangs out with seance, spirit guides, necromancy. The spirit of false religions hang out with Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Islam, Muslim, Shintoism, and Confucianism. The spirit of Antichrist hangs out with anger, hate, deception, mind-bending spirits, false religion, control, manipulation, and death.